Good evening to you. So the Australian Prime Minister says the criminals are in charge of the crime scene. He says there's a Russian cover-up in Ukraine. Is he right? We're wondering. Dutch prosecutors have opened a war crimes investigation into the shooting down of the Malaysia Airlines plane over eastern Ukraine. Forensic experts from the Netherlands have started examining the bodies of the victims. How should the international community respond? What does the West do about Vladimir Putin if his fingerprints are found to be over this tragedy? Sanctions were first imposed in March after Russia was suspected of arming pro-separatist Ukrainians, and they've had next to no effect. And after David Cameron ruled out military action this weekend, all the international community can perhaps do is threaten further sanctions. Well, with more on this, let's speak to Dr. Alan Mendoza from the Henry Jackson Society, who can talk about this with us. Hello to you, Alan.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us on the programme. The Times leader today frames this as Europe versus Russia. Is it as stark as that?
Well, I think this incident has led to unprecedented levels of solidarity across the European Union in revulsion at what's happened. It is rather unusual given just a few short months ago we were very badly divided over the response to Crimea and what then was happening in eastern Ukraine. So it would seem that something rather cathartic has happened to change the European perspective on this and make sure that we all want to tackle Putin.
Is it right to pour so much opprobrium on Putin when, okay, supplying equipment is one thing? Many have argued that the West and the UK and the States supplies arms to regimes that might be distasteful to us, but nonetheless, we don't blame those countries directly for whatever is done with that machinery.
Well, it's a little bit different in this context because while you can have a sort of third-hand approach in relation to countries, long-established countries, here you've got a case where separatists who have only come into being because of Putin's support and are therefore reliant on him are the ones causing trouble. So he's created the monster and he's arming the monster as well, and when the monster does something wrong, he has to therefore be held to account for it.
Do you think he's been emboldened by his adventures in the Crimea in terms of the lack of international response there?
Oh, absolutely. I think if you look at where we are today, had we taken a more resolute stance in Crimea, I think eastern Ukraine would have been pacified a long time ago. The government there would have got on with managing and ruling the country, and you wouldn't have had this issue full stop. It's because we didn't stand up to him that now we have to face a slightly bigger problem.
Yeah, the solution to which is what? Because David Cameron's ruled out military action. I mean, that surely is beyond the pale because we'd be looking at World War III there.
You're not going to attack Russia, of course not. That's not the context. I would have thought that we could have done more in terms of protecting the Kiev government, but leaving that aside, I think what you obviously now looking at are sanctions. And Russia is scared of sanctions, particularly sanctions that do bite at the banking level and in terms of international borrowing. So there are plenty of options there.
What do you think Vladimir Putin's long-term ambitions are?
Very unclear. Only Vladimir Putin can answer that question. They just seem to change on a sort of a frightening regularity. It's clear that he has for some time wanted a destabilized Ukraine. He's wanted to expand Russian influence around the Russian rim to recapture the former glory of the Soviet Union. That's pretty open and obvious from his part. What's happened to his ambitions now as a result of this plane downing, I don't know. We'll have to see over the coming weeks as to how he reacts to that.
Alan Mendoza, thanks for your time on the programme today.
Thank you.
Much appreciated. That's Alan Mendoza from the Henry Jackson Society, which is a think tank which aims to promote Western democracy.